You ever step into someone else's story so deep you end up unraveling every secret the place ever tried to bury? That's exactly how I wound up in the kind of mess you only see on true crime TV or read about on some Reddit thread that spirals into conspiracy theories. Except this one. It's got all the ingredients: a haunted lake house, a grieving mother who runs the neighborhood, a so-called dead hero kid, and enough small-town drama to fill 100 years of town hall meetings. Let's rewind. Picture me this morning, sun just climbing over Crystal Lake, hands raw from sanding the century-old trim on what used to be the Hendricks Ranch House. 6 months ago, it was all rot and raccoon dens, a place even ghosts might have skipped. But I'd sunk every dime I'd saved in 20 years of contracting into this pile of timber, chasing the wild dream of saving a piece of history. Every day, every careful stroke of sandpaper, it felt like I was dragging something worth keeping back into the light, one stubborn splinter at a time. Now let me tell you, this wasn't just a fixer-upper. Every nail I pulled revealed something. The original builder's pencil marks a yellowed newspaper scrap for insulation. Even a kid's drawing tucked behind the baseboard. You could feel the old stories, like the walls themselves remembered everyone who'd ever loved lost or fought inside them. And you bet I felt responsible for giving those stories a second chance. That morning I was dead set on restoring the kitchen when my crowbar thunked against something metal in the wall. Out comes this ancient tin box wrapped in oiled cloth, preserved like someone knew it would matter one day. Inside, a stack of black and white family photos, faces shining with pride, right in the spot where I was kneeling, and more crucially, a fat wad of legal documents, trust papers for the house dated all the way back to 1975. But here's where the ground shifted under my feet. The name Robert Morrison, trustee from 1975 to 2019, was right there on the paperwork. Same Morrison as the HOA president across the street, the lady who up till now mostly just eyeballed my construction site from her porch like a crow watching for roadkill. According to the local lore, her son Michael was a hero, drowned saving another kid 20 years ago. Now his mother was screaming I'd stolen the house right from under her in this trust paperwork. It was messy. Water damage made it hard to read the most critical parts about what happens when a property like this is abandoned. I'll tell you, when you see your neighbor's name on your deed, you don't sleep so easy. And when I started asking around, old Miller, the kind of guy who looks like he's been retired since before the first Nixon term, tells me the Hendricks left in '79 couldn't keep up with taxes. But the real curveball, the HOA president had already asked him about my place. This felt less like a coincidence, more like a setup. Crystal Lake is the kind of spot where the water's calm, but the politics are sharp. I was the outsider, the guy who bought the only chunk of land the HOA couldn't control. The locals didn't even try to hide their suspicion. I'd dropped $200,000 into this place, working against both winter and whispers, restoring history with one eye on the weather and the other on the mailbox, waiting for the next bureaucratic grenade. That grenade landed one perfect autumn morning. I was hanging the original 1924 front door, a thing of beauty brass hardware gleaming, when a black sedan barreled up the gravel drive. Out stepped a woman in a suit with a clipboard clutched like a battle flag, trailed by a briefcase guy, and an older woman who could only be the infamous Karen Morrison. Karen didn't waste a breath. "Stop! You're destroying my son's inheritance!" she screamed, voice echoing across the lake like a siren. Next thing I knew, the whole neighborhood was peeking from their porches. She pointed at me. Then the house. Then her lawyer's stack of folders. This was Michael's. "You stole it." I tried to keep calm. "Ma'am, I bought this place legal at the county tax sale." But she wasn't hearing it. Her team fanned out, snapping photos, waving trust papers, listing every supposed violation, unauthorized renovations, environmental harm, even criminal modifications. By the next day, my mailbox was stuffed with certified letters, stop work orders, threats of prosecution, demands for environmental reviews. 3 out of 4 signed by Karen in her HOA role. But the fourth, that one had her signature in a spot she had no legal right to sign. That was the first real proof she was playing dirty. Suddenly I was a pariah. Contractors stopped returning calls. The lumberyard started asking for permits they'd never needed before. My neighbors who once waved now stared straight through me. Karen weaponized the bureaucracy, launching a war of attrition, death by 1,000 legal paper cuts. But here's the twist. None of the trust paperwork actually gave her a claim. Her son Michael, by law, would have had to be 21 to inherit, and he died at 15 long before the trust could kick in. The county had followed all protocols, and Karen herself had tried to block the tax sale before it happened, but she had no legal standing. I had the receipts. I hired a local lawyer, David Thompson, the kind of guy who smells a scam 2 counties away. He took one look and said, "You're in the right. But this isn't about the law. It's about control." He was right. For Karen, this wasn't a property dispute, it was a campaign. Every neighbor, every phone call, every cold shoulder, it was all coordinated. She staged a full-blown intervention at the next HOA meeting, projecting Michael's baby photos on a screen, painting me as the heartless invader desecrating hallowed ground. Her voice shook with grief, and the whole room wept along. I countered with the facts. Legal documents, timelines, proof that Michael never had a valid claim. But logic can't drown out a sob story, especially one that's been marinating in community myth for 20 years. The room was split. The old-timers backed Karen, blinded by memories. The newcomers eyed the law, worried about precedent. It got ugly. People shouted, lines were drawn. You could see which side folks sat on, and you knew it'd matter at every future barbecue or block party. But then, oh man, here comes the second twist. Turns out that $750,000 insurance payout Karen got after Michael's death didn't happen until 2010, 31 years after the house was lost to taxes. And guess what? The insurance company never found a body. Michael was an expert swimmer. The accident made no sense. The payout only happened after years of investigation, with Karen's story the only witness. I started digging. With help from the old insurance investigator, a retired guy named Mark Stevens who'd never let this case go, I found a trail of bank withdrawals, care facility payments, a mysterious John Davis living at Sunset Manor for 2 decades, all expenses paid by Karen. I visited. There behind a door in a quiet hallway was a man about 35, same jawline, same eyes as the kid in all those family photos, reading a newspaper like he'd done it every day for years. My stomach dropped. Michael Morrison wasn't dead. He was alive, living under a new name, hidden away to escape gambling debts and dangerous collectors. Karen faked his death to protect him, insurance fraud, years of lying, and a community built around a false tragedy. I confronted Karen. At first, she broke tears, confession, everything. I did what I had to, she pleaded. He was in real danger. The insurance paid off the debts. We hid him to keep him alive. The property claim was just so no one would come snooping. She wasn't some mustache-twirling villain, just a desperate mom way out over her skis. But desperate or not, her lies had nearly ruined me and torn the neighborhood in half. At the next meeting, I laid it all out: evidence, dates, bank records, the care facility photos, the timeline of the insurance money. The room froze as Michael himself walked in, very much alive, very much real. Karen broke down the truth, spilling out at last. The crowd, some furious, some weeping, finally saw the whole tangled web: a community grieving a ghost, a family desperate to save itself, an outsider caught in the crossfire. What do you even do with a story like that? The prosecutor chose not to file charges. Michael worked out a repayment plan with the insurance company, 15 years of monthly checks. Karen resigned from the HOA, issued a public apology, and retreated to heal with her son. My ownership of the property was confirmed. No more claims, no more threats. I kept my word and built a memorial garden for Michael's lost childhood, the one thing I could give back that didn't cost anyone else their peace. As the house restoration finished, the neighbors slowly, awkwardly started coming by again. Even a few who'd believed the worst shook my hand, admitted they'd been wrong. Business picked up. Respect returned, not just for the quality of my work, but for sticking to my principles. Sitting on my new porch, watching the lake glow in the dusk, I realized I hadn't just saved an old house, I'd helped force a reckoning that set a whole neighborhood free from the weight of its own secrets. Justice, karma, whatever you want to call it, it finally rolled in, slow but relentless, washing everything clean. But here's what keeps me up sometimes. Was Karen a criminal, or just a mom doing whatever it took to protect her kid? Where's the line between right and wrong when love is at stake, and whose justice really matters, in a small town where everyone's story is tangled up with everyone else's? Would you have forgiven her if you'd been in my boots? Would you have chosen the law, or let mercy have the last word? Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever been caught in a mess where the truth and what's right didn't line up? I want to hear your stories because honestly, after this ride, I know for sure there's more to every neighbor than meets the eye.